Welcome to Raye the Quirky HSP's podcast, where I get real about life as a highly sensitive person. If you are an empath, an introvert, or just trying to navigate this overstimulating world without losing your cool, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Raye, lover of deep conversations, sarcastic humor, and the more than occasional solo adventure. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let's talk about embracing our sensitivity in all its quirky, beautiful forms. Welcome to the first episode of my podcast. Well, technically it's my second, but it's the first one here on Spotify. My name is Raye. I am the Quirky HSP, and I'm excited to share my journey with you as an empath, an introverted, highly sensitive person, and someone with clairvoyant and clairaudient gifts. I'll get into those as we get deeper into the podcast. I got a few stories I can share with you guys about some things that have happened to me. One of which I actually have already uploaded on my YouTube channel, which is Raye the Quirky HSP at YouTube. And I explained what happened the first time that I was back down in the low country of South Carolina. But I digress. So these three aspects make up my trifold personality, as I call it, and each one plays a crucial role in how I navigate the world. As an empath, I feel deeply for others. I absorb their emotions and their energy, which can be both a gift and a challenge. My sensitivity as an HSP means that everyday stimulation can sometimes feel overwhelming, especially as I work at the airport dealing with customers every single day, but it allows me to experience life in vibrant detail as well. Finally, my clairvoyant and clairaudient abilities add another layer of depth, which I'm still figuring out, guiding me in ways that I'm only beginning to understand. All right, so let's get into the definition of an empath, because I had a conversation with a coworker that I've known for 8 years now, from when we started. Well, when I started, she was already working at the airport. But we became, really good close friends, and I recognized her being an introvert a long time ago. It's never really anything that I kind of had to say or ask her about. I did ask her pointedly one day, did she consider herself an introvert? And she said absolutely. But the empath, I couldn't pick up on that as easily or as quickly. So we were doing a podcast, actually. She did a Zoom with me a few weeks ago. And after that video that we did on YouTube or Zoom or whatever, which I haven't uploaded, but I asked her, I said, hey, do you consider yourself to be an empath? And just as I hadn't really considered it about myself, I don't think she had taken the time to consider it about herself, but she took the time to think about it. And she sent me a message back and was like, yeah, I'm actually, an empath, and shared a little story that she had, a situation that when she told her mom that she was, but that's her story to tell. So maybe I can get her to come on to a audio podcast and we can talk about that at that time. But getting back to what the definition is for those of you who don't know what an empath is, and you've heard the term. It's not the same as having empathy. You can have empathy, but not be an empath. So let's get into it. So the definition is an empath is someone who has a heightened ability to sense, feel, and absorb the emotions and energies of others. This goes beyond empathy, as I said, which is the capacity to understand or feel what someone else is experiencing. Empaths physically and emotionally experience others' feelings as if they were their own. The next thing we're going to go into, just to give you a little background, is the characteristics of empaths. Deep emotional sensitivity. Empaths can pick up on the emotional states of those around them, often feeling their joy, sadness, anxiety, or anger. And I've experienced all of those on a daily basis working at the airport. Second bullet point under characteristics of an empath, intuitive understanding. Most empaths have an innate understanding of situations and people's feelings, often without needing verbal communication. Again, something that kind of gets me in trouble at the airport. I'm going to use myself a lot because I definitely have the background to be able to tell you how this affects me, and maybe this affects you the same way. And if you're an empath and your experiences are totally opposite or not as, I should say, strong as mine, feel free to come on. I'd love to be able to speak with you and let's share some experiences and learn from each other. We are compassionate in nature. Empaths are naturally compassionate, often driven to help others and support those in need, sometime and most often to our own detriment. We are overwhelmed by crowds, or I am overwhelmed by crowds. If I go into a parking lot that I'm about to go into a grocery store or a department store, I'm not really one to shop per se. I kind of just go for what I like. I do a lot of online shopping because I don't have to deal with people. But if I do have to go into, say, the grocery store, I go in with a purpose. I go in focused. I do kind of do some window shopping, but it's typically around something that I'm already interested in. I don't just go in randomly looking at stuff and just waiting to see what's going to hit me. That's not how I operate. Maybe the way that you operate. But most empaths feel overwhelmed in crowded or chaotic environments due to the influx of emotions and energy. So, for me, yeah, as I said, that's just not my thing. I prefer to be out in nature, dealing less with people. For my job, I have to do it. Until I don't. I still have about a year and a half left. And once I get out of that, my goal and desire is to work more one-on-one with people, maybe get into training situations, motivational speaking, going on speaking engagements, traveling different places, state to state, city to city, different countries. I don't speak anything other than Spanish, but I'm not that adept at Spanish to be able to have a whole conversation or a whole speech. But, there's ways around that. There's translators that can get my message out as well. So I also have and offer counseling sessions on my website for those of you who are still figuring out who you are. And just for my own, I guess I can put out there how I learned that I was an empath there was a few years ago where, of course, everybody knows about the pandemic. In 2020, I was living in Los Angeles, California, having been there since 2015, where I went out there for an IT gig that just fell apart the day after I got there, and I had to regroup and figure out what I was going to do after that point. So my first job was in Orange County, and I was working as a shuttle driver back and forth to Disneyland. It was a contract company, but we had the contract to drive people back and forth on different routes, depending on where you were coming from the Toy Story lot. I did a lot of different routes. And it was okay because, most people are not angry as they're, going back and forth to Disneyland. They're very excited. Of course, by the end of the day, they're probably drained from all of the driving and walking around and all of that. But typically they were not angry customers. So I didn't have to deal with that, even though I was dealing with a crowd. And my second position was a rehab driver, also in Orange County. So I worked in Costa Mesa and in Irvine, where the main building was. But again, you're dealing with a different kind of people, where my empathy would be on display as I would get very close to some of the people that were in rehab. Of course, I had to go and pick up people in different places. I got stories, y'all. I got people I can't really say, people's names or anything, but I had to go to different remote places all around. I would say not just Southern California, but I'd go as far out as Indio, which is past Palm Springs. And that's a good distance away from Los Angeles to go and pick up people and hear their stories of how they got hooked on drugs. And we're talking cocaine and methamphetamines to the point that this one young lady, she lost her teeth. So, those kinds of stories and meeting those kind of people. And there was one incident where I had to pick up this young man, and he got kind of afraid of the unknown and what it was going to be for him to go through rehab to get, clean of whatever he was going in there for. And when he decided he didn't want to go, or when he panicked and I had to call my supervisor, I had left Long Beach and I was headed toward, I guess, downtown Los Angeles for him to meet up with someone else to go and do the first part of his rehab before he could come back to Orange County. And when my supervisor told me that I was just going to have to leave him, just basically kick him out of the van and just come back to Orange County, the empath in me was like, what are you talking about? I'm not where I was before. So what do you mean just leave him? And I quickly learned that industry or rehab and insurance, and it's all about who can pay and how much they can pay. And if they can't, then, basically just drop them. Sorry, guys, but since I've worked for about almost a year, that's the reality of rehab. I guess I can say in Orange County. I can't say that's, across the board. But yeah, that in that instance, my second job really allowed me to work in my empathy and use it in ways that I could be empathetic toward those that I was caring for or chaperoning, because we were with them 24/7, taking them to AA meetings and taking them to hospital visits. Can't get the word out. Hospital visits, taking them to and sitting in on AA meetings. And I'm thinking, why do I have to sit in here? But it was really a way of being able to make sure that they weren't using again or leaving during the times that they could be, quote unquote, away from their houses to go and use and relapse. So it was a lot of responsibility, and you get very close to people and for them to finish the program. And in most cases, of course, you want them to be able to graduate and move on and get back to their regular lives. But unfortunately, that's not the case with everyone. So there were some people who relapsed, and you had to deal with that at that time, according to what the relapse was and how severe they relapsed. But getting away from that and just giving you guys some intel, that was my second job. And then my third job was going into working at the airport. Now, prior to me working in California, period, I was into IT, information technology. I had gone to school for drafting. I had gone to college prior to that to be an architect, and my oldest brother became ill with the AIDS, not the trait, not all of that. He actually had full-blown AIDS back in 1992, 93, around the same time that Magic Johnson came out. Well, my brother wasn't, and my family wasn't rich enough to have enough resources to take care of him so that he'd still be alive today. So my brother, lost his life about 3 years later, and I had to come home. Of course, in between that, I didn't have to, but I chose to halt my school and my studies for college to help my brother take care of my mother take care of my brother. And so when that was done, I should say, when he passed away, life was calling, and I had to get into life. And so I didn't go back to school, unfortunately. And but I digress. As I said, I went to school eventually and got a scholarship for drafting. And so my life and career in my 30s and pretty much was working for private companies, working as a drafter, engineer, just handling projects where I didn't have to deal with the general public. So my empathy and my, being a sensitive person was something that was just personal, but it didn't affect my work or my duties until I got to the airport. And so when COVID happened and my company allowed us to take some time off, and of course the world was shut down, as we all know, I had an opportunity to pretty much be the loner that I've always been, work on some things for myself. And when the thought came for me to return back to Los Angeles and go back to work, I knew I had about 14 months off, and that came fairly quickly, even though it was kind of boring for a while. I couldn't do anything, couldn't go anywhere, couldn't visit my father. He was about 45 minutes away, and I'm staying in a house on the other side of St. Louis. But eventually I was able to get over it and spend some time with him and work on a van build. But when the time came for me to go back to work, I remember being anxious again. I'd lost a whole lot of weight while I was in Los Angeles prior to the COVID shutdown, I had gone from, I think I was about 220. I'm 5'8". So you couldn't really tell that I'd weighed that much because I have an athletic build, but I was pretty big. And the weight, just the stress, just took that weight off of me in a short period of time. It was, and I didn't even realize it was one of my coworkers that started noticing things about my physique and my face that started slimming down, and my chin got a little pointy, as she said. And next thing you know, I'm down to from a size 12 pants to a size 4. And I got back up. I'm in a size 8 now, but I had gotten down to a size 4. And I couldn't keep anything on my stomach. I was just anxious about bills, and I guess also dealing with people at work, and me not understanding myself, and trying to understand and figure out why I would be so anxious, and why my temperament and my mood would change so quickly depending on who I was around and who I was helping. And I feel like, and I still feel like, despite the effort that I place and put forward in my job every day, now that I am cognizant of this personality type that I have, that I still am misunderstood. I do have, I guess, a wall build up. I have to realize that and recognize it and be honest about it. And I'm more, I guess, in protection mode at work, because you never know when somebody's going to pop off and when somebody's going to just attack your character for whatever reason. I had a guy come in, well, a family, and this man, and apparently him and his wife were having an argument prior to coming up to check in. Had a family, son and daughter were in tow. And as I'm in a good mood and I'm trying to, be jovial and conversational with the gentleman, and his wife was kind of standing over to the side, not really saying anything, but he was very annoyed and irritated off the rip. I mean, no reason to be upset with me. And I didn't basically internalize that. I could see he was really angry, and I'm trying to, be jovial with the gentleman and the family, and he just, just do what you need to do. Just stop. Can we not? And that type of really short and forceful, aggressive energy. So I just kind of laughed it off. I did what I needed to do. But if I were in a mood or in a reactionary type of mood, it probably would have bothered me. And it did. I can't even say that it didn't really bother me. It did, but I didn't allow it to get to the point of really like internalizing why he was acting like that. And one thing that I appreciated at the end, he stormed off, and his wife, as she was passing, going in the same direction as their family, she just kind of said, "He's mad at me." And it's okay, which it bothers me, but I'm not saying that it's okay, but it seems to be okay for the public at large to come in with their moods and whatever they had on their mind before they came to work, and they can just project that energy onto us as customer service people, in my case a ticket agent, and people come in, and you would think that people would be happy to be going somewhere, and it's not always a good case, a happy situation when people have to fly out. Sometimes people are flying out for emergencies and things like that, and when they do, I think I connect more with people who are emotional in that way. Not that they're lashing out at me, but hey, my mom just passed away, I just got news, I got to get there. I'm more than willing to help you. Not to say that I'm not willing to help those that are not in that situation. But when someone comes in and they're late for their flight, don't want to take ownership for being late, and these are grown people, and they want to make it all about you, and you're just simply doing your job, and you're saying, well, okay, I understand that you're late, but the plane is taking off in like 20 minutes. We have a protocol in place. It doesn't change no matter what your status. We are trained to do our job. And that sometimes means disappointing people, not giving them what they want. and having to say, well, I'm so sorry, ma'am, but we're going to have to put you on another flight. What do you mean? The plane is still here. I can make it. Haven't checked in. Have 2 or 3 large suitcases that they can't take to the gate, but they still want what they want. And when you can't give it to them, then, all hell breaks loose. They want your name. Then there's a complaint. And I just think that, and I'm venting because I had a few situations where I'm just, we all are placed in compromising situations when we're doing our job and simply just trying to do our job. So I guess I have this opportunity, since it's my podcast, to be a little personal about some things that happens on my job and in my position. And maybe that will, if you're listening and you're a person who travels, maybe it gives you a different thing, a different perspective to understand where we're coming from, and not just, well, I needed to get to where I'm going and my Lyft driver was late. But anyway, again, I digress. Let's get back to my introduction, this first podcast, and why I chose to do it. All of this, I guess, to educate the masses about being introverted and identifying someone who's an introvert or a highly sensitive person, and not just make the assumption that we're rude or that we're what's the word? What word could I use? Reserved, angry, aloof. A lot of times, I can say for myself, it's me just protecting my energy. I have crystals in my pocket. I walk around with crystal bracelets. Just anything that I can think of that I can do to protect myself from the energies that's a lot of energy coming at you. I'm drained most of the day. When I get off work, I don't want to talk to anyone because I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of people that day. And for most, and for those that are not empathetic or not empaths or not highly sensitive, it's easier. It's almost like, gosh, I wish I wasn't who I am. I love who I am. I've learned to embrace and appreciate who I am. But at the same time, yeah, it gets to be a lot in this skin. Empaths versus non-empaths. Wow. I think I just did that. Those of us who feel, for example, I'll give another example of when sometimes you just gotta pick your challenges. And I was walking home, and I was close to my apartment complex when I walked by this woman who was speaking to herself. I guess she was in some type of turmoil, and my first instinct was to comfort her, get involved, ask some questions. Ma'am, are you okay? May I help you? Do you have anybody? But as I'm learning to preserve my own energy and strength and just my own emotional tank, as it were, I chose to keep going, not to ignore her. I saw her. I didn't say anything to this person because I knew that if I had stopped, that it would have been more than I could have handled at that time. So even we as empaths have days where we just can't. And sometimes that happens when we are in positions that we are not necessarily wanting to be in, i.e. work, somewhere that we are not prepared to deal with a situation like that. It could be work, it could be somewhere else. But just because we are empaths doesn't mean that we're pushovers. I don't want to give any type of a wrong impression about who we are as people. We're sensitive, yes. We are thoughtful. We are able to anticipate the needs of others just simply by an instinct, by intuition, not necessarily something that you've confirmed verbally on the other end toward us. And because I'll make it personal, because I do have the ability to intuit someone's feelings, especially in front of me. We're working directly together at the airport, and you may be going through something, and it could be just the slightest pause in your conversation, and I know something's wrong. It could be a slightest irritation on your face, and I may internalize it. May not be intentional, true enough, but I may still internalize it. And then I'm wondering, even as someone may wonder on the other side, well, is she mad at me because she's not being jovial? Is she mad at me because, she's just handing me my boarding pass and she's not asking me how my day was? Well, I might be having a day. And not that your day is not important, but it's a transaction that takes less than 5 minutes. And I'm not excusing or giving any type of excuse for providing less than stellar customer service for someone. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is people are human, and to stop being human during the time where you feel attacked or not protected is just it doesn't seem instinctive for me to let my guard 100% down so that another person feels 100% more safe emotionally than I do. I hope that makes sense. At any rate, I think I'm getting close to the end of this podcast for the day. I will delve into some other things tomorrow. I think I've gotten into enough challenges and enough of a definition to give you guys an idea of what it means to be an empath. I'm going to try to do these once a week so that you get used to hearing my voice. I decided not to do the video podcast on my YouTube channel. Number one, I reached out to a few people whose schedules are just not conducive with mine. And audio, since it's just going to be my voice, and I prefer to use my voice only right now to get my, it's not about being seen for me. It's more important that what I convey and what I can share with the world gets out. And so for me and my schedule, doing audio podcasts are much easier for me to upload. And I guess even for my own sense of just, what I'm comfortable with right now. I understand I have to do things that I'm not comfortable with, and I do them all the time. But in this case, I really, really am passionate about getting the word out and educating people about what it really means to be an empath, what it really means to be an introverted person and a highly sensitive person, especially now that I understand myself. And thanks to Elaine Aron in her book, The Highly Sensitive Person, it really, really helped me to understand my childhood, understand why I am the way that I am now. And even though it wasn't something that was discussed in my household, I was just really called sensitive. And not in a way that felt accepted, if I can say it that way. It was always just a really strong observation. Well, you're so sensitive, or you're so damn sensitive, and stop being so sensitive. And so growing up and hearing it that way, of course, I'm never not myself, but I've always been a loner because I didn't feel really understood or really seen by even my family. And even so now, another conversation for another time. Maybe that's something I can discuss with anybody who wants to call in or email me, and we can get on some type of a two-way audio medium to have a conversation, and we can upload that. I'm open to conversation. As I said in my introduction, I like deep conversations. I don't really like to do small talk. So with that, it's about 30 minutes, a little bit over that. And I'm just going to do this raw. I'm not going to do any editing. I'm going to upload this just as it is. And if you are resonating with my content so far, if my voice is not too screechy and it's something that you feel like you can listen to, then please follow me, follow this channel, share it with anyone that you feel would enjoy the content, even if it's just from this one and maybe some other stuff that you've seen on me online. I have a website. It's the number 3, not that spelled out. It's actually just the number 3, SARAYE.com. And I have a picture of myself. You can see what I look like, but I feel more comfortable doing this audio. I can hear myself. I bought this new microphone. I was struggling with this other microphone that I was gifted by my father. No offense, I can still use it, but this one just connected directly to my computer, and I have my headphones on. I can do this a whole lot easier when I have something that I'm thinking about. I have figured out this editing software, at least one of them that I have on my computer. So this is what works for me. So won't be a whole lot on YouTube for now, unless I progress to that level. But right now, Spotify is a platform that I've listened to other people on. Trevor Noah, I love you, and of course Missy Yanla, she's on some podcasts. So I'm learning as I go, and so. Thank you for your time. I thank you for listening thus far. If someone has turned you on to this podcast, this particular episode, stay tuned. I know I said before that I was going to be doing the uploads on YouTube, but there's a lot that goes into doing editing. And while I'm still doing a whole lot of hours working at the airport, it's just not feasible for me to do that. And I don't want to promise something that I can't deliver. My second podcast was supposed to be about Dumbo, and I can do that actually on my second podcast here. But I did want to give some introduction, since I hadn't done any introduction of myself here on Spotify. I wanted to go ahead and let that be my introduction, and then I'll give you guys my long-awaited podcast here instead of on YouTube about my feelings about that movie and that cartoon as a kid, Dumbo. And that's actually a little trivia. His name was actually not Dumbo. So if anybody knows, put it in the comments. You can do it on YouTube. You can send me a message in email on my website. I'd love it if you signed up on my website if you have any questions. I also have some t-shirts on there, so if you guys are so inclined to buy a t-shirt, I would love to do that for you. Just go to my website, look around, and thank you for your time. Peace. Thanks for hanging out with me today on Raye the Quirky HSP podcast. If today's episode made you feel seen, heard, or maybe just a little less alone, make sure to hit that follow link, then that plus sign, and if you're feeling generous, hit that share and enlighten a friend. And reviews don't hurt. They only help my podcast to grow, so go on and do that too, please. And hey, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to my website. It is threesaraye.com. That's the number 3, SARAYE.com. Please share your thoughts. Sign up there to be notified of when I move and how I move, and let me know what topics you'd love for me to dive into next. Remember, your sensitivity isn't a flaw. It's your superpower. Until next time, stay quirky, stay kind, and keep shining.